So what I have tried to do in organizing this course is organize the chapters in the book in the order in which you will be doing things in your research project. So the first part of what you're going to do in your research project will be your literature review. Now we haven't talked about that yet, but what I would like to do on that is wait until we find out what topic you're interested in, and then we can focus on that, and then how you can organize your literature review around that topic. In terms of actual data collection, the second major section will be your qualitative research. And if you call qualitative research is from the more of the nominal perspective, it involves subjective kinds of methodologies where we want to study people in their natural settings and how they make sense of, interpret the world around them, what their experiences are, try to understand those experiences from their perspective, as in standing and experiencing that in their shoes. It's lined with inductive reasoning, and as I said, we look at the participants or respondents or informants. Those are words we use to look at the people that we're interviewing or conducting focus groups with, to seek to understand their perspectives and views for that group of people. The other thing about qualitative research that's important is that in some quantitative research, particularly with surveys and things like that, what you're doing there is you're looking at a variety of topics or issues that are of interest to the researcher. So it's kind of broad sometimes in what you're covering when you do a survey. But with qualitative research, what you're trying to do is really drill down into specific aspects of what people's experiences are and what those meanings are. And that's where things like when we talk about focus groups and interviews, we're probing and trying to then ask follow-up questions and things like that to help people talk more about those particular things that they mentioned as being relevant in their life. Now, there are a variety of data collection methods that you use in doing qualitative research. We will talk about all of these, at least the ones where I've designated the pages in the book in Chapter 11, I believe. One I'll talk about with this lecture will be focus groups. Now, when you do your qualitative research, some of you may use focus groups. So that's why we're covering them. We will also cover in a subsequent lecture here in a moment in-depth interviews. That's probably what most of you are going to be doing for your qualitative methods. When I've done this course in the past, most people do the qualitative part with interviews, although a few have used focus groups. And those are the two most popular ways to do the qualitative methods, and they're both highly acceptable. There are also things like field observations that involve note-taking and audio-video recording and things like that. These probably are not going to be things that you're going to do because they're too time-consuming, but we'll talk about them in terms of as examples of qualitative research that you will be responsible for knowing and we could ask questions on. In field observations, you really have two kinds of people. You kind of have what's called the non-participant observer. In other words, you're watching an activity. You're not taking part of the activity. So you're simply observing the activity that's going on. So like if you're shadowing a physician seeing patients, you're sitting in on company meetings, you're volunteering at a board meeting to just sit back and watch. Sometimes that's what people do when they have internships, is you get to shadow someone and watch what they do and how they do their work. That's the non-participant observer. The participant observer is actually an active participant in the activity. So this would be something where you're serving as a voluntary police officer, or you join a Quidditch team to what it's like, or you join a particular club or group, and then you are not only observing what they're doing, you're actually taking part in it. So those are the differences between non-participant observers and participant observers. So let's talk specific, and we'll talk about ethnographies later. That's kind of related to field observations. But let's talk then about focus groups first, since this is going to be one of the methods that some of you may use. Now, most of you know what a focus group is. It's where you get a group of people together and they talk about something, and you give them a prompt or a question, and then they talk about it to talk about what their opinions are on it. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to identify for people in this group, their norms, their impressions, their perspectives, where they differ in opinions and things like that. And this group, focus groups are good for that. So what you're trying to do is either to gain answers to the questions that you're interested in, but also to generate ideas from them in terms of what it is that you are, what it is that you're interested in, and how they might help inform what you're doing. For example, in our qualitative research assignment in this class, one of the things that you're going to do is use the data from your qualitative research, not only to answer your qualitative research question, but also to help inform what you're going to do on the quantitative side. So qualitative research, focus groups, and interviews in particular can not only answer the research questions you're interested in, but they can also generate ideas for you to do in subsequent research. What you try to do is capitalize on the group interaction to produce this information and insights through brainstorming that the group does, how they chain off of one another's ideas, and then try to develop those in a particular direction. Focus groups usually have less than 10 participants. When it gets more than that, it's a little bit more complicated. So when you do your focus groups, if you choose to do focus groups, I would recommend somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 people. The other thing is that focus groups need to have a moderator. That is someone who's monitoring the group process. Because one of the things you don't want to have happen is the group to get off track and into some area that you're less interested in, or they get bogged down on a particular issue and they need someone to come in and say, okay, we've heard enough about that. How about this? And give them another prompt which you can get them to talk about. Typically, these are audio recorded. So if you were doing a real focus group, that's what you would be doing. However, for you, you don't need to audio record these. But if you choose focus groups, you do need to have someone who's not only the moderator, but yet have another member of your group who will be taking notes and kind of summarizing the important points in the discussion. So here are some examples of what you do in focus groups. What are consumer attitudes toward a product? Here we're going to put a new product on the line. What do you think? What do you think about the taste? What do you think about the looks? What do you think about how it's packaged? What do you think about the price? Those could be things. You use focus groups for mock juries. What arguments tend to sell in this community when it comes to liability for an accident? What kinds of things should a person avoid in talking to a jury about because they tend to create some backlash in what people think. Let's test some political messages. Let's get a group together and let's give them some examples of different political messages and see what they think about it before we choose which one we're going to use. Testing ideas for potential TV shows. For example, a TV show I like a lot is Big Bang, and a derivative of that is what is now the Young Sheldon TV show. Probably what the producers of that show did is they saw the popularity of Big Bang show, and then what they decided to do is then say, well, I wonder if we could sell a show that would be about Sheldon when he was a child. And so they probably ran that idea with a variety of focus group, with a focus group or several focus groups in order to test its feasibility. You might want to get a group of cancer survivors together and have them talk about how cancer changed their way of life in terms of not only how they conduct their life, but also how they think about life. So those are a lot of advantages that a focus group has, but it does have some potential limitations that you need to be aware of. 1 or 2 members of that group can dominate the discussion. So you need to be real careful to make sure you can, as a moderator, you can have some balanced participation. Relatedly, some group members may not be participating at all. So you may need to follow up with specific prompts and invite some of the people who are not participating very much in order to get them to talk so that you get more balance among the discussion of the focus group members. Sometimes the participants get off track. And when they do, you've got to have the moderator bring them back on track so that they can stay focused on the questions and the issues that you're interested in hearing their views about.